So the Torah tells us there is a mitzvah of building a Mishkan, building a Beis HaMikdash. V'astu li mikdash v'shachanti b'socham. And that's what we're learning about, reading about over the next weeks of Truma, Tetzaveh, Vayaka Pekudei, the mitzvah of Binyan Beis HaMikdash, of building the temple. And we'll go into the different details in terms of what exactly is the purpose of the Mikdash, the Mishkan, and the difference between the Aron and other Kelim. But tonight we'll discuss the following question: the Rambam writes in Hilchas Beis HaBechira, Perek Aleph Halacha Yud Beis. He talks about the mitzvah of building the Beis HaMikdash, and the Rambam tells us, Ein bonin es HaMikdash ba'layla. One does not build the Beis HaMikdash at night. Shenamar, as the Torah tells us, Ubiyom hakim es HaMishkan. It says, Ubiyom, the pasuk says, in the day, you will put up the Mishkan. So the Rambam writes, Biyom v'lo b'layla. And then the Rambam continues, the oskim b'binyan, and what is considered this time period. The Rambam perhaps is saying a chiddush, perhaps not, but the Rambam is telling us, va'oskim b'binyan me'alos hashachar atzeis hachochavim. He says that you could build the Beis HaMikdash from dawn until nightfall. Which is interesting because we know in general rule, there's a general discussion in the Gemara and the Rishonim and the Achronim exactly when is Yom, when is Laila, when does day begin, when does day end. The Machlokes Magen Avram and Vilna Gaon. But Pashist, we assume in our halachas that basically it's a Friday night. We light candles 18 minutes before Shkia, but we agree at Shkia, at sunset, it begins Ben Hashmash as the time of doubtful day, doubtful night, Safek Yom, Safek Laila. And when the three stars come out, it's Vaday Laila. It's definitely night. So before sunset, it's definitely labeled day. When the three stars come out, or whenever nighttime is, it's labeled nighttime, Seitzach Chochavim. The time period in between sunset and nightfall, that's labeled Ben Hashmashas, which is halacha is Safek Yom, Safek Laila. Doubtful day, doubtful night. So, and that's what we treat. That's why Friday night we bring in Shabbos early. Besides, there's a mitzvah of Tosefes Shabbos. But even without the mitzvah of Tosefes Shabbos, you'd have to bring in Shabbos before sunset, or else you might be a Safek Machal Shabbos. And similarly, we go with Chumrah, we end Shabbos later because maybe really nightfall is the end of the day. So we go with strict in both ends. We say maybe sunset's the end of day and therefore we don't do any work Friday, but then we wait until nightfall before we do any work because maybe the day doesn't end until Seitzach Chochavim. So we have a general principle, Safek D'Oraisa L'Chumrah, a doubt regarding a biblical law we're strict on, a doubt regarding a rabbinic law we're lenient on. So it's interesting, the Rambam writes, V'oskim Avinyan Me'alos HaShachar Ad Seitzach Chochavim. You would think that the Rambam would say, you should build the Beis HaMikdash, stop building at sunset. Because it's Safek Yom, Safek Laila. So perhaps there's some literature on that we'll get into another time. But be it as it may, the Rambam writes, the mitzvah is to build the Mishkan in the day, not at night. The Beis HaMikdash, and the chiddush is you could build until nightfall. The Kol Chayavim Livnos, and everyone's obligated in building and to help the Mamonam, etc., and Nashim as well. Anashim. So it's mashma from the Rambam, from this Rambam, that not only are men obligated in the mitzvah of Binyan Beis HaMikdash, of building the Beis HaMikdash, but women are obligated as well. And therefore, this leads to a famous question of many of the Achronim. It's a kasha, it's a question on the Rambam. Because the Rambam writes, the mitzvah, binyan beis hamikdash, is only during the day. And you can't build it at night. So that makes binyan beis hamikdash, at first glance, a mitzvah aseh shazman grama, a time-oriented mitzvah. And the Mishnah tells us in Kiddushin and other places, Nashim Peturas mitzvahs aseh shazman grama. Women are exempt from time-oriented mitzvahs. So how could it be? How could the Rambam on one hand say the mitzvah building the Beis HaMikdash is only biyom, and during the day and not at night, and the next moment come along and say women are chayav? So that's the question of the Achronim on the Rambam. How could the Rambam say that a woman are chayav in binyan Beis HaMikdash? It seems to be a mitzvah aseh shehazman grama. So the Minchas Chinuch, v'kosru ha'achronim v'taretz api divrei ha'minchas chinuch mitzvah sadihei. So the Minchas Chinuch, they quote as saying as follows: the din zeh the ein bonus hamikdash balayla hu rak lechatchila. This halacha of building the Beis HaMikdash during the day and not at night, this is only a preferable thing, a lechatchila, the ideal way. But let's say you did build it at night. Do you have to undo everything you did because the building at night is pasul? So the Minchas Chinuch says no. It's only a lechatchila. And therefore he says, Kevin the chol makam sholoshana kasev alav la'akev lo la'akev b'di'eved v'rak din lechatchila. So when does it come out? Yotzei shalaylo mufka l'gamrei midin binyan beis hamikdash. So the Minchas Chinuch writes that since really if you built it at night, it's good. So it shows that really, again, is a general. When you want to get down to the core of the halacha, you have to see what the b'di'eved are. You can't tell from the lechatchilas. You should always strive to do the lechatchilas personally. If you're trying to figure out the geder hadin, the nature of an isser or a mitzvah, you have to get down to the b'di'eved. So we see from the fact that one can build. If one went ahead, if you ask me, can you build the Beis HaMikdash, can you build the temple at night, I'll tell you no. But if you ask me, I already built it, is it possible to have to take it down? The answer is no. So we see that the Zman really, that the binyan Beis HaMikdash really applies all the time, even at night. Because the fact that it's good at night, so we see the mitzvah applies. And according to this, so we understand the Rambam. Because the mitzvahs binyan Beis HaMikdash eina nachshavas l'mitzvahs aseh shehazman grama. It's not as man grama. Kevin shehalayla lo mufka l'gamrei midin. Since you can build, it's not recommended. But if you do build, it's good. Therefore, ein b'kach psul. Therefore, it's not as man grama. In fact, this reminds me of a Gemara in Kiddushin regarding the mitzvah of milah. The Gemara discusses how do we know a man is obligated in the circumcision of his child and not the mother. So the Torah marshals a pasuk from, I think, Vayera, or in that area, Kasher Tziva Oso, that God commanded Abraham and not Sarah, Oso v'lo Oso. So we see the obligation on a man, not a woman, to make sure the son gets circumcised. To Tosas in Kiddushin as a famous question, and not only Tosas but many Rishonim. Why do you need a special pasuk to tell me that a woman is exempt from doing the circumcision of her son? Kasher tziva oso v'lo osa tebeglei mishum the mitzvah aseh shehazman gramo. To say simply, it's a time-oriented mitzvah, and since it's a time-oriented mitzvah, that's why a woman's putter. So, Tosas over there in Kiddushin Chavtes goes into a discussion. You get into what about milah at night? So according to the opinion that milah, there is an opinion that we don't follow, that a milah shelo bizmana. Let's say you missed day 8, so you could, once you miss the day 8, so then 9 at night, 10 at night, you could do it at night. we don't pass it that way, but according to that opinion Yevamos, so then it's not as man grama. So if it's not as man grama, so therefore you need the pasuk kasher tziva osa below osa. But then Rabbi Kiva Eger asks, what about Shabbos? That we don't do Mila on Shabbos unless it's a Mila Bizmana. So if you don't do it on Shabbos, that means it's a mitzvah seishas magrama. So it's a whole discussion there that along our lines. So let's say you go ahead and maybe it's also to do a Mila Shalom Bizmana on Shabbos. But let's say you do it. So if you assume the Mila is good, like those Achronim point out, so then that's the same thing. Really, it's not the same, but the same principle. But this is like Binyan Beis HaMikdash is a din lechatchila b'yom. But if you did it at night, it's still good, but perhaps it's the same thing by Mila. That Mila b'alayla shelo bezmana is no good, but according to those opinions, at least in Lamdis, and so we see that how do we view nighttime? Is nighttime the mitzvah totally uprooted? Or on Shabbos is the mitzvah totally uprooted, or it's just temporarily suspended? So if you assume that a Mila Shalom Bizmana, if you do it on Shabbos, b'di'evet, if you yotze the Mila, or if you do it at night after day 8, you yotze, so then it's similar to here, to Binyan Beis HaMikdash. So we answer the question by saying it's not as Bangrama. Mila is not as Bangrama, and that's why I need the pasuk. Or over here, Binyan Beis HaMikdash isn't as Bangrama, and therefore women are obligated in the mitzvah since we don't have a pasuk excluding them. So that's one answer. Other Achronim suggest as follows: Odei Shloma Damasha Ein Bona Balayla Hainu Etzem Habinyan Ba'kamas Habinyan Jurak Biyom. When do we say that the mitzvah of building the Beis HaMikdash is during the day and not at night? That's the actual building of the Beis HaMikdash. But getting everything ready, getting the stones ready, it says Yom HaKames Mishkan. That's the actual hukam, the putting up. Avahachanas Habinyan. But the preparing of the building, the Hechsher Habinyan, Lahavi et Abanim, to bring the stones, to cut the trees, and all the other hachanas, Ein Shum Isser Lasos Gam Balayla. You can do all the preparation at night, it's just the actual building. That's what Shenashim Chayavos. And therefore, that's what someone has suggested, that really it's a technical legal issue. The actual putting up of the Mishkan, the putting up of the Beis HaMikdash can't be done at night, the actual construction. But the preparing, bringing the things over, getting the stones ready, cutting the trees, or whatever preparations you need, that can be done at night. So therefore, it's not as mangrama, it's not a time-oriented mitzvah, and hence women are obligated. Again, it reminds me of something similar in by Mila, that some point out as follows, is a famous Tosfos Harid. In other words, on the same question of Tosfos, why do we need a special pasuk, kasher tziva oso, that God commanded Abraham and not Sarah? It's a time-oriented mitzvah anyway, so what's the difference? So Tosfos Harid answers, or others answer, they talk about a mitzvah shabagufo. So that's what Tosfos Harid talks about. Other Achronim Rishonim discuss what is the nature of the mitzvah. The mitzvah is, we can redefine the mitzvah of Mila. It's not just the cutting of the foreskin, but it's all the preparation. So the moment the child is born, you got to get called the doctor, the mohel, the caterer for the bagel and lox. So basically, and you always, even at night, you have to worry, make sure the baby's okay. You got to call people, invite them for the bris. So same thing here. We're redefining the mitzvah of Binyan Beis HaMikdash. It applies all the time. It's just the legal, technical detail of doing the building must be at night. It must be during the day. So too by Mila. Really, it's not as magrama. It starts from day one, the minute the child's born. But in terms of the technical, legal, it has to be done by Yom. So again, really, Mila is not as magrama, and really Binyan Beis HaMikdash is not as magrama, and that's why Binyan Beis HaMikdash, a woman is obligated. So that's answer number 2. There's a third answer that I would like to share with you tonight is some Achronim bring down the following. That they write the following Yisod. The Inyan mitzvahs binyan beis hamikdash v'zu min ha-mitzvahs, so the Chinuch writes in mitzvah sadihei regarding the mitzvah of building the beis hamikdash. V'zu min ha-mitzvah she'enon mutelas al yochid ki im al hatzibor kuo sheyibana ha-bayis b'mheira v'yameinu. That the Sefer Chinuch tells us that the mitzvah of building a Beis HaMikdash is not on the individual, it's not a choves hayochid, but it's a choves hatzibor. V'nira the kavanas hachinuch the mitzvah matelas al hatzibor hainu shafil yochid ha'osa mitzvah, even if an individual does this mitzvah, ain't a mitzvah shelo levad. It's not only his, hu motzi es hatzibor. He's representing the congregation, the community of mitzvah zu. Because the ein rishos liyachid l'zachas of mitzvah zu, because it's a mitzvah on the rabbim, the individual doesn't have a right to get all the schar. They shachol hatzibah shutfim a mitzvah zazi zu. And therefore, that's what the Sefer Chinuch writes, it's a mitzvah al hatzibor. And therefore, if that's the case, Upashet to go shaykh mitzvah kizu pater shal mitzvah sasesha zman grama. When do we say a woman is exempt from a time-oriented mitzvah? That's on a mitzvah de yachid. But a mitzvah de rabbim, a woman is obligated. Masha'en gave a mitzvah sheichel et tzibor, ain't a mitzvah motelet al isha levad, shenemar shehi petur mitzvah zu, de ein lo isha mitzvah zu, el chelok mitzvah sa tzibor. V'matzibor chayav, v'meila gam hi chayavis basiyasa, ve'ein ela k'motzias hatzibor. And therefore, we have another answer. Well, how could the Rambam say the mitzvah is only during the day and not at night, and then the same breath say that women are chayev? And the answer is because that's the exemption of Zman Grama is only on mitzvahs to yachid. In fact, we find it similar by Mila as well, perhaps. There's a famous Turi Even and others, and they point out that the same thing by Mila, perhaps one could argue. Because Gemara tells us that if a father can't do it, then the Beis Din has a whole list of obligations on who takes care to ensure that every Jewish male is circumcised. So the Ramban, he discusses about the concept that why do we need a pasuk, or others say the Ritva, they don't spell it out, but working with the concept they bring down is you can make the following suggestion that I would have thought that Mila is a mitzvah on the tzibur, because if a man can't do it, the Beis Din can't do it. So if it's a mitzvah on the tzibur, so a woman wouldn't be exempt, and in fact they're part of the tzibur. Kamash malon kashet tziva also below osa. I would have thought that Mila, and in fact it's certainly it is, it's a mitzvah derabim, it's a mitzvah of the tzibur, and therefore I would have thought that women would be exempt, and they would be based on that a woman would not be exempt. Therefore, the pasuk by Mila to obligate them. But by Beis Hamikdash, we say the pasuk b'yom hakim es Mishkan that applies to women as well, and therefore women are obligated in the mitzvah binyan Beis Hamikdash. To summarize, we discussed the issue whether the mitzvah of building the Beis Hamikdash. The Rambam writes the mitzvah is to build the Beis Hamikdash b'yom and not b'layla, and he also writes that women, or implies that women are obligated in this mitzvah. So the question is, if the mitzvah is only during the day and not at night, so how could it be that the women are obligated? If the mitzvah says Eisha Zman Grama. So there were three schools of thought. A1 was that we redefined the mitzvah. If a mitzvah can be done b'di'evet, it's true, it's a chadchila during the day. But if the mitzvah of binyan Beis Hamikdash is done at night, it doesn't puzzle it, it doesn't make it no good. So we see really the Laila is also part of the Zman, and therefore it's not considered a Zman Grama. Similarly, like we said by Mila, if B'diavad after day 8, if done at night, or perhaps on Shabbos, when it's a little Bizmana, so if you assume it's good, so again, we see that perhaps that's why it's not a Zman Grama, because if it's good B'diavad, it shows that the mitzvah isn't uprooted, it's just temporarily suspended, but if you do it, it's still good. That was A1. A2, they point out that that's only the technical, legal definition of building. When you're actually putting it up, that has to be done during the day. But all the preparation, carrying everything over, preparing, bringing the stones, cutting the trees, that can be done all the time. So therefore, really, it's not as Zman Grama. Women are obligated. It's only a technical issue that we put it up in the day, but the mitzvah applies all the time. So too, like we said by Mila as well, that someday the mitzvah starts right from the moment of birth, calling the Moel, calling the caterer, and therefore you're redefining the mitzvah. It's not the actual cutting off of the arla, but the result. You have to make sure your child's a gamal, and you have to do everything possible. So again, so that's why the second reason why women are obligated, because it's not as Zman Grama. And thirdly, because you can do it all the time. And thirdly, they point out it's a mitzvah hasibur, that the mitzvah is done during the day. That when do we say a woman is exempt from a Zman Grama? That's only during the day. No. When do we say women are exempt from a mitzvah? That's only a mitzvah de yachid. But the binyan beis hamikdash is a mitzvah hasibur, and therefore there's no exemption of Zman Grama. And therefore, for that reason, women as well as men are obligated in the binyan beis hamikdash, because if you do it at night, it's still good. But you can prepare day and night. You just can't put it up only during the day. And since it's a communal mitzvah, so therefore there's no exemption of mitzvah aseh shaz Zman Grama.